Yeah, like always, I want to thank you guys online and here in person for coming out and covering Penn State football. Appreciate that. Obviously, I'd like to take a moment and share and give my thoughts and prayers to Coach Elliott, to UVA football, all the family and friends and the entire UVA community. Obviously, found out through Coach Poindexter, who obviously worked there for a long time and is an alum, but just it's hard to even fathom. So we send our thoughts and prayers, and if there's anything that we can do as a Penn State community, obviously we would do that. But it's hard to even put into words. Kind of changing subjects here. I wanted to wish the best of luck to Coach Shar and our field hockey team, which is awesome, in the Final Four. I think Shar was in here just before we came in. I think they play UNC on Friday, so wish them the best of luck. And then also Coach Dombuck and women's soccer as they host West Virginia on Friday. I hope everybody will come out and support them. Second round of the NCAA tournament, awesome to see the success that they had in the Big Ten tournament. Got on a roll. We were actually watching it at my radio show one night when they won, and then I think actually Coach Dombach was there last Thursday before we were able to wish her the best of luck. So that's awesome to see. One other thing that I did wanted to mention, and every situation is a little bit unique, when it comes to injuries, but Chris had showed me there's been some misreporting out there. And I just kind of want to clear these things up. But like I mentioned last week, Joey Porter had a non-football specific injury, and there's been some misreporting out there, and I don't understand how that happens, but it did. So I will get into the specifics of this one, so it clears it up. But Joey had an appendicitis, and that's what happened. Obviously, I wouldn't release any medical information without clearing it with the family first. But I don't like the fact that there's been some misreporting out there. I don't really understand how that happens, but it did. So I wanted to clear it up. Moving on to Maryland. We talk about the stats that we focus on all the time is the turnover battle, and we tied that one. We had one late in the game. Penalty battle, we won that. The drive start battle, we won that. The sack battle, we won that significantly. The explosive play battle, not only did we win that battle, but we also met our offensive and defensive goals. Our players of the game on offense was Nick Singleton. On defense was Chop Robinson and Abdul Carter. And then on special teams was Jake Pinniger. On top of that, Nick was also the Big Ten Freshman of the Week, and Jake Pinniger was the Special Teams Player of the Week. And obviously the Jake Pinniger thing, I just think is a great example, especially in 2022 with all the different things going on. Transfer portal and so on and so forth. And here's a guy who was a starter, lost his starting job, handled it the right way, and now is the starter again and doing extremely well, was just recognized by the Big Ten. So he's, I think, a great example for a lot of our guys. Some more, kind of summary of the game, positives. I thought the first play of the game, if you go back and watch it, the kickoff, I thought was just a great example of how we played. It was a great kick. The coverage, guys were flying down the field. We were aggressive and violent, and that was a great play. I showed the entire team that. Obviously, Jake's 3 field goals, 3 PATs, 3 touchbacks, inside the 16. On 2 of our kickoffs, we pinned him inside the 16. So those were all positive. Defense, we have 14 different players right now that have recorded at least 1 sack this season. I think that leads the country. Defense with back-to-back games with 6 or more sacks. First time that's happened since 2007. Defense held Maryland at 27 yards in the first half. And then offensively, fourth game this year without allowing a sack. First time that that's happened since 2011. Obviously, O-line plays a major part in that. The running backs play a major part in that. But also, the quarterbacks have played a major part in that, too, in terms of their ability to extend plays or get rid of the ball. And then, just the last thing, opportunities for growth. We talk about starting fast. We did that, but then finishing strong. And I just didn't feel like we truly played the second half. We say every game is 0-0 coming out of halftime, and I'm not sure we truly did that up to the same standard and expectations. 27-0 in the first half, and then we did win the second half 3-0, but not at the same standard, in my opinion. Moving on to Rutgers, and Coach Schiano. Obviously, there's history with Coach Schiano. Got a ton of respect for him. Watch him on tape. Their team plays really hard. He's got 16 years of coaching experience at the college and NFL levels. Obviously, now at Rutgers, was at Tampa Bay Buccaneers, was also at Rutgers from 2001 to 11, and then also had been on the staff here at Penn State. So there's some history there. When you talk about offensive coordinator, they made a coaching change during the season. Nunzio Campanelli, who we know is the interim, comes from a coach's family. Got a ton of respect for Coach Campanelli and his entire family. Guys that we've been impressed with, their running back number 23, I think, is really playing good football right now. Kyle Manungai is playing really well. I remember going and scouting him. We're actually going to scout another running back, and this guy just kind of kept showing up. And I remember coming back and saying that's a really good running back there, and is playing really well right now. I think kind of their offense right now kind of goes through him. Their wide receiver number 1, Aaron Cruikshank, obviously was a difference maker at Wisconsin, has been a difference maker at Rutgers, both on offense and special teams. And then their tight end, number 21, Johnny Langan, does a lot of things for them. Those last two guys are both transfer guys for them, but Johnny does a lot of things for them, whether it's tight end or whether it's quarterback, so on and so forth. And then their defensive coordinator, Joe Hirsimek. I hope I said that right. If I didn't, I apologize. I actually worked on it before I came over here. I think I still screwed it up. Got a unique background that I respect. The defense coordinator at Rutgers, was the co-defense coordinator at Minnesota. Before that was the head coach and defensive coordinator at Maine. I've heard a lot of great things about him. Obviously, we've watched him on tape, and like they always do on defense. And I know Coach Schiano's got a factor in this as well, but they play really hard. They play really well on defense and have been for a number of years. Guys that jump out to us, guy that we recruited really hard, that I think is playing really well for them, jumps out on tape. Number 71, Aaron Lewis, also another transfer for them. Their Sam linebacker, safety, depending on how they play them. Number 0, Isian. Avery Young, their strong safety, number 2, is a local kid. Their will linebacker, number 17, Deion Jennings. And then another transfer that they got from Temple, their defensive tackle, number 88, J, is playing really well for them. And then on special teams, they don't have a special teams coordinator named. I think they break the units up by assistants, and then Schiano, I think, is running the whole thing. Their punter is I think, one of the more impressive players that we've played this year, regardless of position. Finished, I think, second in the Ray Guy Award last year. This guy is one of them Aussie punters that can do it. Roll into his right, roll into his left, traditional from the pocket. He'll run with it if you're not containing him. He'll hold on to the ball so the coverage units can cover down. He'll pin you deep. They're not always the big, beautiful, spiraling, high hang time punts. A lot of times they're line drive, low ones that hit the ground and run. But he is a difference maker and a problem from Melbourne, Australia. And then obviously we talked about Crookshank, the punt returner and kick returner, and then Max Melton is a player for them, and one of the areas on special teams that their problem is blocking kicks. They've been blocking kicks for a long time there with Greg at Rutgers, and Max Melton's a big factor in that. So open up the questions.
Start with Rich Carcello, Reading Eagle, and then we'll go to Mark Wogenrich.
Good afternoon, James. How are you?
Good, Rich. How are you, man?
I'm great, thanks. Jair Brown, what kind of impact, what kind of year has he had, do you think? Where has he made the biggest improvement, and what kind of impact has he had at Penn State in his career?
Yeah, I've said this before. I don't think he's getting enough attention. I don't think enough people are talking about him when it comes to college football awards. When it comes to the NFL, his name should be all over the place. He's playing his tail off. He makes his teammates better. He's able to impact the game both in the run game and in the pass game. He's a very well-rounded football player, and he's been a phenomenal leader for us. Kid out of Trenton, New Jersey, went to Lackawanna Junior College. He got up and did his share Friday night at the hotel with the team, and just did a phenomenal job. He's always got a smile on his face. He's truly appreciative of this opportunity at Penn State. He's got a really good way of being a great teammate, to the guys in the locker room, but he also really understands how to interact with coaches and have a positive, healthy relationship with the coaches. He's been phenomenal. I think him and PJ have been two of the better leaders that we've had in our program.
Mark Wogenrich, all Penn State, then Frank Bodani.
How are you today?
Good, how are you?
Good, thanks. You mentioned Joey Porter Jr. Just with regard to his timeline, could he return for you this season?
Yes, but that's also why I don't like to get into what the specific injuries are, because then people pull up their medical books and research how long will that guy be out. That's typically why I don't get into these types of things. But yeah, we're expecting him back.
Frank Bodani, York Daily Record, then Mike Gross.
Hey, good afternoon, James.
How you doing?
Real good. From our vantage point, Jake looks a little like a different kicker the past couple of weeks. Can you give any insight into that, his development this year? And has there been one thing that's impressed you the most about his journey at Penn State?
Yeah, I think it's like a lot of things, and it's probably magnified maybe at those positions where, a couple good kicks really can lead to, tremendous confidence, and then build on that and build on that. He's done it as a kickoff guy. He's done it as a field goal guy, and I think right now he's playing really confident football. And obviously the thing that we had some issues early on where we had some leakage inside in our protection, and we made some adjustments there, both through scheme and personnel, and that solidified the protection, so he hasn't had to worry about that anymore. And then no one talks about Chris Stoll, but that guy just does his job, at a high level, and has been doing it, at Penn State now for 9 years. And, no one ever talks about him. And then, you talk about Barney and Moore holding. So that whole kind of operation has been really good. But I'm proud of Jake. I think he's a great example, within our program. And I agree with you. He's kicking at a really high level right now. And obviously, we want that to continue, and he wants that to continue.
Mike Gross, Lancaster Newspaper, then Donnie Collins.
Good afternoon, James. How are you?
Good, Mike. How are you, man?
Good, thanks. Joey Porter is one of those corners that about whom people say, well, you can leave him alone and just let him lock down somebody, and then that frees you up defensively to do other things. So in his absence last week, and maybe to whatever extent he's going to be absent, do you have to do things differently? Do you have to Well, that's all. Do you have to do things differently because of his absence?
No, and I think last week was a really good example of that. You know, we played a team that, you know, has traditionally thrown the ball really well, explosive throws, high percentage throws. They've been really difficult to deal with, and obviously Joey gets a ton of credit, and he deserves that. But you know, you look at how Kalen King has been playing. You look at how Johnny Dixon has been playing. Johnny may be one of the most improved guys in our entire program. You know, you look at, you know, Daquan Hardy. You know, you look at Marquise Wilson. You know, we feel like, you know, we got 5 corners that have played a lot of football for us, and played really well. You know, and played really well. And then we got a young kid, Cam Miller, who we're excited about, who's starting to come on for us and get more and more playing time. Driver's a guy that played on defense on Saturday. We're also playing him on offense. He has position flexibility. We're excited about him. You know, so yeah, I think, you know, to your point, you know, we didn't change scheme or how we play on Saturday. We were able to do it, you know, with those guys and do it at a high level. Obviously, you know, we're excited and hoping to get Joey back as soon as possible, but we were able to execute our defense at a very high level on Saturday against a really good team, you know, with those corners that were available.
Donnie Collins, Scranton Times-Tribune, then Ben Jones.
How are we doing, James?
Hey, Don. Good, man. How are you?
We good. A couple weeks ago, Cliff said that Katron Allen was one of the most improved players he's seen in a short amount of time. And it seems clear that Nick is kind of trending on that level, the way he's running between the tackles, seeing some things he didn't see maybe earlier in the season. Did you kind of have I know you guys figured they would make a big impact early on, but did you get a sense of how much they could improve in such a short time? And how high has their ceiling gotten from the beginning of the season to now in your mind?
Yeah, you know, obviously recruiting those guys, we felt like they could, you know, come in and help, and then they graduated early and were able to be there for the spring, so that helped, and we were able to kind of get a glimpse at it. You know, Katron's really changed his body. I think that's had a huge impact on his quickness and his acceleration. Obviously, the strength staff has done a great job with those guys in the weight room as well. And obviously, they've been able to get a ton of opportunities and a ton of reps, which you know, number one, they've earned, and number two, some of the circumstances have factored into that. And then, you know, I think our O-line and tight ends are playing well. So it's a combination of all those things. But yeah, I think they've improved. I think the fact that they were here in the spring really helped. I think they both had really good summers. But it's a combination of kind of all those factors together. And to be honest, I think really both of them have just scratched the surface. I think they're going to continue to get better. You know, when it comes to pass protection, I think they're going to continue to get better in the passing game, which is an area, you know, I think would help us as an offense to get them more involved in the passing game and for them to grow in that area as route runners and consistently making plays on the ball. So I think, you know, we've really just kind of scratched the surface with those two guys, which obviously is exciting.
Ben Jones, StateCollege.com, then Corey Geiger.
Hey James, how's it going?
Good. How are you, Ben?
Good. There's only 7 teams that have converted more fourth down attempts than you this year. Obviously, why you attempt a fourth down, it has a lot to do with all sorts of different kinds of things. But it seems like football in general has transitioned more and more towards fourth down being a viable offensive down. I don't know if that's correct, but if it is, do you feel like fourth down is less taboo of an offensive down than it used to be, and how has that sort of changed over the years if it has?
Yeah, so I think within the coaching community, it definitely has, because everybody is using some form of analytics now. You know, it's interesting is we use a company, and we know everybody else in the conference and the teams we play who uses the same company, so they're getting the same recommendations that we are and things like that. So that's always interesting. But yeah, I think within the coaching community, there's no doubt that there has been a shift, and I would say a pretty significant shift. Now, in terms of the media and the fans and everybody else, I don't know about that. I think it's taboo when it doesn't work, and it's awesome when it does. I always find it interesting too when I'm watching games, and I always find it interesting. Not all the time, but like a lot of times, a team will be about to go for it on fourth down, and whoever's announcing the game will wait until after the play and then have a strong opinion on it. And I got no problem with strong opinions. I'd like them to do it before the play, which is enough time to do it typically on their thoughts. But really, the data's pretty significant. I think a perfect example of that is. Again, it goes back to execution, but I think a perfect example of that is the one on Saturday where we punted it. We shanked the punt. I think it ended up being a 16-yard punt. And there's one where really the data at that time was saying that the punt was the right choice. But then after you punt it, you only really net 16 yards. You're like, it really wasn't necessarily worth it. You probably should have went for it there. But you can't think like that, right? You can't think based on the result, although we all like to. But yeah, I think when you look at the analytics, it's pretty strong. And I'm not one of these guys that I live and die by it. I do exactly what the book says. We go through the recommendations. I kind of got a core group of guys that I meet with. We meet every Monday, and what's interesting, Ben, is we kind of go over what we want to do. Okay, here's what the book is suggesting we do this week, because it does adjust based on your opponent subtly. So we'll go over it when we want to go for two and not, and it's interesting. So I get the book's recommendation, then I get the 4 staff members' recommendations, and then I make the final call, and then we go into the game, with that information. But it's also kind of interesting because there's some people that are going to do it no matter what, and for us, it's just another kind of piece of information that guides you. I still feel like during the game, based on how the game is playing out, the weather, are you scoring more than maybe you anticipated, or scoring less than you anticipated? All those things kind of factor into it. And then what we try to do is we try to discuss as an entire organization, not just the staff, but the players, hey, this is what we want to do. Is everybody on the same page? Because if the offense goes for it on fourth down, just like the fans, if it doesn't work, the defense has to go out now and have the offense's back. And we've been able to do that and play pretty good complementary football. I thought it was interesting. I brought that up. Our defense has played really good sudden change defense this year. But then it was interesting is when Manny was presenting to the team, which we do that offense, defense, and special teams, and Manny got up, I think it was on a Tuesday, and he brought up, but not only is the defense playing great, the offense has played really good backed up football. So, a lot of times when offense has been backed up inside our own 10-yard line, we've been able to get at least 2 first downs and flip field positions. So, all those things kind of factor into it. But I do think, to your point, within the coaching industry, there's a lot more, I think, that have gotten comfortable with going for it on fourth down than maybe the few coaches out there that have still been resistant to it.
We'll go to Corey Geiger, DK Pittsburgh Sports, and then we'll come in here in the room.
Hi, James.
How you doing?
Some of your players have talked about Clifford being undervalued. Do you think over time that the fan base may come to appreciate or look more favorably on his career than maybe what it has up to this point?
Yeah, I think you have to be careful with that, right? I think we all have to do, because I think more times than not, and I don't have any, back to analytics, I don't have any analytics on this to study, but if I had to guess, it's the vocal minority. I mean, I get I get a lot of emails from a lot of people, you know, that are super positive and super appreciative of Sean and what he's done, you know, throughout his career here. But typically, the positive ones aren't as vocal as the people, you know, criticizing. At least that's what I hope. That's what I want to believe. But yeah, I'd love for that. I'd love for that kid, you know, not to get ahead of ourselves, but in our last game, senior day, I hope he gets the type of appreciation and recognition that he deserves. You know, so you know, we'll see. Again, I don't spend a whole lot of time on it, and I think over time, Sean hasn't anymore either. You know, but I hope so. But it's outside of our control, so try not to, you know, spend too much time or energy on it. And focus on the things that we can control, which is playing really well on Saturday. So hopefully people cheer.
Mark?
Hey James, thanks for your time today.
You too, Mark.
Your T formation, that short yardage package you have, has been worked really well all year. Worked really well last week. What have the keys to success to that been for that in your view?
Well, I think the first thing is it's balanced. You know, so defensively they have to defend runs to the right, runs to the left, runs in the middle. So kind of wherever you show kind of weaknesses, we have the ability to attack. And then you have to defend throws to the right, throws to the left, you know, play actions, keepers. And then we've also shown on film that we have the ability, because of our tight ends, to explode out of that and even get an empty formation. So, you know, it's like anything, right? There's enough complementary pieces and enough diversity that it makes it difficult. And we're playing pretty good on the O-line, and we're playing pretty good at tight end, and we got some backs, you know, that can make you miss and break tackles. And when you do that, you know, in those situations, it's like cover zero defensively. You know, you're going to commit that much to stopping the run that if you can break a tackle and get through, there's nothing left. So, you know, it's been a good package to us. And we're going to continue to use it and take a lot of pride in it.
John?
Hey James, how are you doing today?
Good. How are you doing?
Doing well. After the game in Indiana, Brennan said that one of your messages to the players has been, be where your feet are. That mindset of being in the moment, not getting too high or too low. One, how much do you think that approach has helped this team this season? And then secondly, are there ways that approach has served you well during your coaching career?
Yeah, it's back to the, you know, the 1-0, right? You know, everybody else wants to, and that's family and friends calling about tickets to certain games and how this game, we win this game and that makes the next game even bigger, and all these different types of things. And the other thing I try to do, and I'd like to do it in here, but I don't think it would go over as well. But like the other thing I try to do is on Sundays when we celebrate the wins, you know, I put examples up on the board. And there's tons of examples, whether it's in the NFL, you know, like we saw this past weekend, or in college. I get it. There's games that people are going to focus on and talk about these being, you know, what they would say big games or really important games. But, you know, the consistency is also important. And we've seen programs also have the big wins, and then they lose 2 or 3 games that they're not supposed to. And what you're really trying to do is you're really trying to do both, which is challenging. So I think, you know, making sure that our players appreciate and understand what the cost of winning is in terms of their habits and their behaviors, both on and off the field weekly, and that's coaches as well. So I think for the most part we've handled that, you know, and I think another example of that too is being able to rebound quickly when you do have a setback. which again, I think is harder than it's ever been to do because there's so many voices and noise. And it's interesting, you know, I think it was Dave Jones that asked the question after the game about our fan base and our community really caring and that being a differentiator. We talked about that. But there's also the other end of that, right? You know, when you have a setback, it hurts. It hurts everybody. And that's why it makes it, you know, being present is so important, because if not, you know, it's hard to get away from the positivity, which can be negative in terms of everybody patting you on the back and telling you how wonderful you are. And when things don't go well, you know, the negativity towards an individual or towards the team can be tough too. So, you know, being able to focus and tune all that stuff out is easier said than done.
Bob?
Hey James, how are you?
Good, Bob. How are you?
Good. Juice Scruggs this year, could you assess his development at center, especially lately, and his importance at that position given some of the health issues you've had around him? And how far has he come in his career given he had a pretty significant, I think, health issue early on?
Yeah, I'm a huge Juice Scruggs fan, and I'm a huge Karen Scruggs fan. They are awesome. That's his mom. She's been phenomenal. He's been phenomenal. I mean, you know, right now we're not in an ideal situation. Here's a guy who's played a ton of football at Penn State, and we got him in the game at the end of the game because we've got nobody else to put in right now. You know, just you talk about a guy that literally practices every day, bumps and bruises, plays in every game, bumps and bruises. Not only is playing at a high level, but is durable, is consistent, is the quarterback of the O-line, is the quarterback of the protections, is the quarterback of the run game, getting us all on the same page. You know, he makes us go. He's got a huge smile on his face all the time. He comes walking in the facility. Every time I see him, he always hits me, "What's up, big dog?" Every time he sees me, he daps me up. I would let him babysit my kids. I'd hire him to work at Penn State. I'd work for him, depending on how things go. He's an awesome kid. He's an awesome kid. I talked to his mom last week she called about something. He's been a great Penn Stater, and he's going to go on and do great things, not only in football, but after football. He's just got a great way about him. He really does. I love him. I wish Karen would have 5 more. I don't think she will.
No.
Hey, James.
Hey, Neil.
Curious, you made a couple NFL references and also meeting with families. Has the timetable changed with NIL and agents in terms of assessments, whereas maybe that took place after the season or in December? Has that, compounded the challenges? Has it been kind of a different type of situation concerning the NFL with players?
Yeah, I don't think I've maybe been more verbal about it with you guys, but it's really something that we've done for the last number of years. I think where it really changed is when the rule got changed from an NCAA perspective, that agents could talk to players from the time they're a freshman. That's changed things because their phones are ringing off the hook constantly. Everybody's got an opinion. And if you're not talking to them, somebody else is. And ultimately, we just want our guys to have great information and their families. So that's changed it as much as anything. And then obviously the transfer portal. In the old days, we wouldn't. It was a program rule for a long time. We wouldn't talk to family members about playing time. Those days are over. We're talking about playing time, why they are or why they're not. Because once again, if you're not talking to them, somebody else is. So, but it's been the last couple of years since the rule with the agents has changed, and then obviously transfer portal is probably the other thing that's factored into this.
Daniel?
Afternoon, James.
Hey, Dan.
We talked to Jair this morning, and he was pretty candid with us about how he feels that he told us he feels like he didn't reach any of the personal goals that he had for himself this year. He was pretty, I guess, emotional about talking about, coming up on the end of his college career at Penn State. I'm just curious, from kind of the behind the scenes, he praised him on the field, but what's he been kind of like behind the scenes in terms of his drive and how he's approached, his opportunity this season?
Yeah, he's been phenomenal in every way that I could describe. And I would say really no matter how this season has gone, if he had 10 interceptions right now, I think he'd still be disappointed. It's just kind of how he's wired. He's very driven. He's very competitive. He's got a really good ability to see the big picture. Got tremendous perspective. His mom is a huge driving force kind of in his life and how he was brought up. And she did a phenomenal job. Was very involved. I don't think she's ever missed one of his games all the way back to Little League. But yeah, that doesn't surprise me. But he's been awesome in the meeting rooms. He's been awesome in the locker room. He's been awesome after big wins. He's been tremendous after challenging situations. But that's like I mentioned earlier when we were talking about him. It won't surprise me if he skyrockets up people's draft boards, because I think he's going to test well, and then I think he's going to interview well. Our guys typically have tested well. That's been pretty well documented at the combine in terms of how we develop and prepare our guys. But the other thing is our guys interview well. Our guys know football. Our guys understand situational football. Knock on wood, our guys are high production and low maintenance. We don't have a whole lot of issues off the field. I think all the feedback that I've gotten from friends of mine in the NFL, whether GMs or scouts or whatever, our guys have represented themselves extremely well. So it won't surprise me if after this thing's all said and done, that he skyrockets up draft boards.
Hi, James. How are you?
Good. It's aggressive.
Sorry.
No, I like it.
So obviously reaching the point in the season where the team's a little bit banged up, like bumps and bruises, like you mentioned before. What's your assessment on how the team has handled the next man up mentality and all the guys some of the guys having to scramble and fill these shoes?
Yeah, I think really well. And it's been interesting. There's been some guys that are getting in games and playing, which is probably somewhat unusual based on their journey to Penn State and at Penn State. But have really handled it well and done well. But it's kind of everything. You got true freshmen starting at positions that we traditionally haven't had true freshmen start at. We got veterans, either taking more reps than we traditionally would. It's very different on offense and defense. If you look at our rep count on defense, it's way down compared to last year and maybe the year before, because we're rotating so many guys, and I think that's why you're seeing our defense play fresh and still being really disruptive at this time of the year and getting better. The sack stat that I threw out in the beginning, I think, is a perfect example of that. I think we're number one in the country with 14 different players with a sack. That's an example of depth and playing guys. But if you look at we're getting off the field on third down, which is really important. We've been able to control the ball more on offense, which has been important, and we're playing a ton of guys. So defensively, I think the last two games they've only about 60 reps, per game or less. And then if you look at the snap count, there's really very few guys over 25 reps in a game. So there's a ton of value in that in terms of the season and the fourth quarter and late in the season where we are now. And for the most part, we've been that way on offense as well, except for the O-line. A ton of value in that, but our guys have handled the the challenges that have come, the bumps and the bruises that have come, either playing through some of those things or situations where they can't, and guys stepping up and coming in and playing well. So I think there's a ton of really good examples of that.
2 more. Start with Salver.
Hey James, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Doing good. We talked a lot about Tig. How much of an impact has he had on the 3 guys that have played next to him a lot, in Zaki, Keaton, and Jalen? And how would you evaluate how those 3 have played so far this year?
Yeah, I think really well, and I think that's probably the thing you guys have heard me talk about it before, about his ability not only to play well individually, but his impact on the guys around him. And he's probably one of the guys that early on his rep count was high. Why? Because we felt strongly, and Coach Poindexter felt strongly, that, you know, all those guys, when you talk about, you know, our safeties, you know, whether it's Jalen Reed or KJ Winston or Zach Key or Keaton Ellis, that it was obvious when you watch the tape that they all played better when he was on the field with them. So he was the one guy that his rep count was a little bit higher because of that. So we're trying to kind of, you know, change those things. Keaton's another guy, obviously, that's experienced. So when Tig wasn't on the field, we wanted to make sure Keaton was on the field because he could have a similar impact, and we need Keaton to kind of step into that role, you know, moving forward. But yeah, I think we're a better defense when Tig's on the field in the back end, kind of running the back 7, and obviously you got PJ doing that up front. And now you're starting to see, you know, Kobe and Elsdon do that at linebacker. But coming into the season, you know, obviously we didn't know that. We didn't know how that was going to be. But I think Tig's Jair's had a huge impact on our defense as a whole, and specifically the guys around him.
Zach, last question.
Hey James, thank you for your time today.
You as well.
Earlier you said Johnny Dixon may be one of the most improved players in the program. What are some of the things that he's done in practice that maybe we don't see that kind of exemplify that?
Yeah, I think it's you know, probably the thing, and I know I use some of the same things, not because I'm trying to use canned responses with you guys, but because I believe in them. It's consistency. I think that's the thing we talk about all the time. You know, for the most part, every kid in our program is there for a reason. You know, they have the ability to make big time plays, and Johnny's been that guy. But he's just been so much more consistent with his practice habits, with his demeanor, with his attention to detail, and at the end of the day, with his play and production. You know, I think Terry's done a really good job. I think Dex has done a really good job. That those guys are working together on the back end. They meet more as a unit. But you know, Johnny just continues to grow and gain confidence. He's always been, you know, fiercely competitive, but he's just doing it on a much more consistent level, day in and day out, which equates to more consistent Saturdays.
Thank you, Coach.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
You too. Thank you.